So you have configured your first LAN interface, and now it's time to enable its DHCP service. A DHCP server running on your interface, letting any client that connects to that interface get an IP from its pool. Now let's see how it is done and what else can be configured on your DHCP server. Let's move on to one of our interfaces. You know what? Let's edit a new port, a port which we haven't touched up until now. Let's quickly configure it as the internal LAN, and let's assign him a role as a LAN. And now let's assign a new IP address for that interface. Let's enable administrative access through HTTPS and HTTP. Let's add up ping also. And now let's enable DHCP server. Now we don't have to use the whole pool. We can use specific number of IP addresses that will be assigned to anyone who connects to that interface. Let's assume that we would only want 40 IP addresses. So the pool will start from 10.10.9.2 up to 10.10.9.42. Now the subnet stays the same. It's the same 24 subnet as we configured. The default gateway also stays the same. The default gateway for anyone who connects to our LAN interface is actually the IP address of our interface. The DNS server can be the same as our system DNS, and it can also be another DNS server if we choose to. And then we move on to the more advanced options of our DHCP server. The fact that we can configure a DHCP server on our interface doesn't mean that we have to. There are times that we already have in our organization a DHCP server already configured on a Windows server or a Linux server. Now we can use the relay mode to forward any DHCP request that comes from clients that are connected to our interface to the specific DHCP server that is already serving our organization. But in our case, we will use the internal DHCP server that is in our work. We move on to two more additional capabilities of our DHCP server. The first one is the additional DHCP options, and the second one is the MAC reservation plus access control. We will look at the DHCP options at our next video, where we will also configure the DHCP option. But let's start with the MAC reservation plus access control. The MAC reservation plus access control allows us to bind a specific IP to a specific MAC address, or maybe to block a specific MAC address from getting an IP address. So let's create a new MAC address. All right, and now we can see that we have three options. The first one is reserve IP, the second one is assign IP, and the third one is block IP. First option, reserve IP, allows us to reserve a specific IP address. Let's choose the 10.10.9.23 to that specific MAC address. Now the second option, assign IP, will make sure that the same device with that MAC address will get an IP from the DHCP server and will get the same IP address time and time again, assuming that its list time has not expired. Now the third option is quite self-explanatory. The device with that MAC address will not get an IP address from that pool.